Ladies and gentlemen, Nikesh Arora.
So I have some good news and some bad news for you. Good news is that my head cold is worse than Guy's. I was on a flight back from Dubai last night, so I can't hear anything. So if you guys are going to heckle, go crazy, all right? Your phones, your pagers, it doesn't matter. The bad news is I've never done this before. This like round thing, standing in the middle, because I know there's a bunch of people at my back. I don't know what they're saying, what they're doing. So after a while, they've told me to walk outside of here, look at these people to make sure they're behaving themselves. So you guys have to help me a little bit. Anyway, so part of the challenge is when you come here to speak, the first time, or if you're the first speaker, you have the benefit and the opportunity that you can say a lot of stuff, and then over the rest of the day, many people will stand here and repeat some of the things I'm going to say. So the good news is I get to go first. The bad news is I already saw in the first video that Grant put up there. Already you guys are talking about MySpace, Yahoo, LinkedIn, etc., Facebook. So we're going to do a quick poll. I have only 20 minutes, so I will be speaking very fast. How many of you have a MySpace or any kind of blogging account? Raise your hands, please, quickly. This is early in the morning. You can do it. Okay. How many of you have an instant messaging account? Okay, that's not many of you. How many are unwilling to admit they have an instant? Sorry, no. How many of you have more than 50 friends on your instant messaging account? 100. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. More than 150. You're in the wrong age group. Sorry. The average teenager has over 200 friends on their instant messaging account. They haven't met 75% of them in real life ever. Right? So we are going into a phase which none of us has seen before. I'm going to start the day with two very provocative statements. One, I think above 50% of the marketeers out there in the world do not understand what's going on around them. Okay? And at least 50% of you should be willing to stand up and challenge that. But I can't hear, as I said, so it doesn't matter. The second thing I will tell you is I'm not here to give a doomsday speech. This is not the end of the world. All the changes we're talking about are going to take 8, 10, 15 years to happen, right? I started my career. By the way, I have about 20 slides. I can do 20 minutes without slides, so don't worry about it. I'll show you the slides in the end if you guys feel so interested or inclined. But when I started my career, I used to work in the mobile phone industry, and I saw this piece of research which said, because there's a phone around the corner, everybody has a phone, you have one in your house, you have one in a phone box, you have one next to you, the probability that people will want a mobile phone is very low. So the prediction 15 years ago was that there would be 3% of the people in the world who would need a mobile phone. How many of you have a mobile phone? Never mind, I know the answer. Who doesn't have one? They're definitely in the wrong place, right? So clearly it's very hard to sit back and predict those things, but you turn around, you look and you say, that's pretty obvious. It was very obvious that people were going to have a mobile phone. Well, that's great. How many of you actually sat there when mobile phones came out and said there is going to be 80 or 100% penetration of mobile phones in 10 or 15 years? If you did say that and you're still in this room, I feel sorry for you because you had picked up a trend which is very hard to pick up. I moved to the UK 7 years ago, and I used to live in the US. In the US, we believe in largesse. In the US, we believe in having lots of things. And many of them. So I had 3 VCRs. You know what a VCR is? Okay, that's 7 years ago. Okay. But I was so ticked off when I moved here because they would not work in the plugs and they don't have the same format, is what I figured out. So I decided to dump them and I got myself a DVD player. Right? Pretty visionary 7 years ago, I'd say. So I went to my local video store and they had one small rack in the corner where they had DVDs for rent, and they had like a whole store where 3/4 of the store was full of videos. 7 years later, you go there now, I don't know if they have a video section. Do you guys remember if your video stores have a video section? That's pretty obvious, wasn't it, 7 years ago? How many of you picked that up? The reason I'm telling you this is that you sit here, we all sit here and say, yes, I get it, I know what's going on out there, I understand what's going on there, I am so smart. Well, if you are, try and take this movie and play this forward 10 years from now and look back and say, what is the world going to look like 10 years from now with all the trends I'm seeing today? In that case, how do I want my business, my company, my product, my brand to be positioned 10 years from now, and what do I need to do today? Because 10 years from now, it will be too late. Everybody else would have figured it out. So the question is, what are you going to learn today during the day of the conference? What are you going to pick up? And how are you going to turn that around? Use it for your brand, use it for your product, use it for what you do. I think it's time to see some slides, right? Okay. You're supposed to be, there we go. So if I look at what is going on over there from an internet perspective, I think what's happening out there is as big as the revolution you saw with water, steam, combustion, oil, etc. Lots of big changes are happening. In the last 10 years, the internet penetration or the number of people on broadband has gone up from, broadband's about 450 million by the next 2 years, it's 250 million now. There's 1.2 billion people on the internet today. How many of you remember the internet bubble? Do you guys know what the internet bubble was? Sort of, kind of, yeah. That was 1999, right? 2000, something like that? There were 350 million people on the web at that time. And the internet bubble at that time, I'd say there was less than 10% broadband penetration. It was all in your offices. It wasn't at home. Today there's 1.2 billion people. It's going to be 40% broadband penetration in 2 years. What's fascinating is the market cap of the 6 internet companies today is greater than the market cap of all the internet companies in 2000. So I'm not quite sure when the internet bubble was or when the internet bubble is. But anyway, I think we're sitting at a point where there's a huge revolution going on. You haven't missed the boat yet because there's lots of stuff that is going to happen in the next 10 years. There are 3 fundamental reasons I believe this is not going to go away. The first reason is, everybody who has broadband is not going to give it up. How many of you have broadband at home? Fantastic. If you keep your hands up for a second, please. How many of you are willing to not have it work for a week? Fascinating, right? Now, this is a phenomenon in marketing you should all dream of. It's called going from a nice to have to a must have. And the moment your product goes from a nice to have to a must have, you've made it. I can now have a very glib question. How many of you would be willing to live without Google search? But I'm not going to go there. I hope none of you as well. But again, the point is you've got to figure out a way that your product goes from a nice to have to a must have. And I think broadband access has gone from a nice to have to a must have. And because of that, I don't think this trend is going away. If you look at the other phenomenon which is happening out there is the cost of storage. Today, are you tapping that because I'm already overrunning my time yet? Or no? Okay, I'm doing okay, just checking. Right, okay. I don't think I'm going to get through my slides, so it's okay. The second thing that's happening out is the cost of storage. And I'll go through this quickly. An iPod, which stores about 40,000 songs today, because of the fact that storage gets cheaper. So literally you can buy twice the storage in 13 months at today's price. So 13 months from now, you'll be able to pay half the price for the storage you buy today. That's the other way to look at it. If you follow that math, in 10 years, our storage capacity will go up 1,000 times. Right? What does that mean? That means you can have an iPod in which you can put all the content ever created, whether it's music or video, in about 15 years. Every piece of content ever created can be on an iPod in 15 years. What does that mean? What does that do to your product? Does that mean we need broadband at all? I'll just go to Africa and start giving them iPods for $250. They don't even need broadband access because it costs $7,500 a month in Africa to get broadband. So I don't know, but there is a change going on that is going to impact things. From a very more technological perspective, what that means is we as people will be very comfortable storing all of our data on the web, right? Because it's so cheap to store. Most companies will offer free storage for your files, for your data, for your email, etc. And last but not the least, most of you are carrying mobile phones are now carrying a tool of content production. You have a digital camera in your phone, which means people are going to get more participative, more involved. So I've already talked about the fact there's 1 billion people out there, there's 3 billion people with phones. The only point I will make for you people in this room who are marketeers, this is 1 billion people connected by the same need, right? Which is very different. It's never been possible in the past to find 1 billion people on a global platform who are connected by the same need. They are all online, they have very similar attributes, they all know many, many, many similar things. If the online community was a country, it would be the 5th largest country in the world. Imagine launching a product into the 5th largest country in the world purely online without having to need physical space, physical logistics. There is no wonder that in the last 10 years, the top 3 brands that have developed online. Whether it's Amazon, eBay, or Google. Right. So there's a lesson in here for all of us. So if you look at what people do on the web, it has primarily been their need for information. Now, how does that impact your life? Well, there's 1 billion searches done every day. That's sort of one per every person. And if I go around the room, all of you will admit sheepishly that you actually do more than one search a day. So there are some people in the world who are not searching, who are online, and we spend our time trying to find them. We're searching for the people who are not searching, right? Come on, guys. Give me a break. It's 9 o'clock in the morning, right? The next thing that people are doing in the web is chatting, communicating, talking to each other. Again, the same mobile phone guys who told us that there's going to be 3% usage of mobile phones said when we have mobile phones, if mobile phones were to take off, people would stop using their fixed line phones because on an average our desire to talk as humans is only about 600 minutes a month. Well, surprise, surprise, now we speak for about 1,800 minutes a month. And we send 60 billion emails a day. We have 23 billion instant messages a day, which means we are turning into a, constant partial attention society. You guys ever heard this phrase? Constant partial attention. It's sort of the nice way of saying attention deficit disorder. It's like a very politically correct way of saying constant partial attention. It means I'm paying attention to you, darling. Don't worry, I'm also doing this at the same time. Right? So that's what's happening out there. People are communicating. The next thing, which hopefully impacts you guys more and more specifically, is the notion of commerce. I'm told they will catch up eventually. The European market is 130 billion euros for e-commerce. It has tripled in the last 3 years. It's going to double again in the next 4 years. How many of your company's products are available on the web? I was talking about that in Germany a while ago, and I talked to somebody and they said, we have products, but the problem is we're scared of selling our products directly on the web because our dealers are going to get really pissed off. Everybody has dealers. They get really pissed off. I said, okay, so what happens? They said, well, the problem is in the last 6 months, one of our dealers set up a website, and now he's selling more product in the country than we are collectively in that whole region. So again, the opportunity or the challenge is your product available for consumption out there because people are willing to deal with it? 5 years ago, I hadn't bought anything on the web. Now it's highly unlikely anybody who buys anything worth more than 500 pounds or 500 euros is not going to do so without researching it on the web. The next trend, which everybody's still trying to figure out, is what Grant talked about. His epiphany came 2 years ago with MySpace and his 12-year-old. There are 250 million people out there who are on MySpace, I think, something like that. Maybe even more. Since I did this slide, there's more people. Between MySpace, Facebook, Yahoo, there are 250 million people. I don't know what they do. I haven't been able to spend too much time with them, but clearly you guys raised your hands and said you all participate in it. It's not quite clear how these communities are going to evolve. And people like Guy are going to try and figure it out in Telegraph Online TV. But there's still an interesting battle out there. Is content going to be at the center and communities going to form around it? Or is community going to be at the center and people will find like-minded communities to discuss relevant content? Don't know the answer. But I'll tell you what, every 5 seconds, somebody out there posts a consumer opinion on the web. And the question is, even if you're not there personally, as a marketeer, do you know who's talking about what up there on the web? Does anybody in the room work for Cadbury's? Before I tell the story? Okay, I'll tell you a story. Cadbury is a brand called Whisper. Does anybody know a brand called Whisper? Good, there's some people in the room who are old enough to remember Whisper. Well, Cadbury decided to stop producing their product earlier this year until they found out there were 93 Facebook communities about Whisper. They found out there were 14,000 fans posting opinions on Facebook saying, bring back Whisper. Until the climax happened when at Glastonbury, when Iggy Pop was performing, people ran up stage with a banner saying, bring back Whisper. Now, as a marketer, doesn't that make your heart go all warm and happy? My brand, somebody still loves it? Well, Cadbury's bringing it back. They're going to make 23 million this year to test if the product still has legs in the market. So, I don't know, do you know what people are saying about your product on the web? Most marketeers aren't ready, because the way we like to ask people what they think is we bring them into a room, put very, very bright lights on them, and tell them, if you can imagine a world where people could fly, how would they look like? And the guy says, I really don't have an opinion, but if you insist and you're paying me $50 an hour, I'll tell you something. And I say, look, I did consumer research. Now I know what consumers want. So the point is, you just need to go out there and see what people are saying in these communities. And last but not the least, the most recent notion is people are going up to the web and looking for entertainment. They're looking to be entertained. There are 500 million playbacks of YouTube videos on the web. And YouTube probably has less than 50% market share of all the entertainment on the web. So between iTunes and videos, et cetera, there's lots of stuff happening out there. So that's the easy part. Here's what we did. We tracked that and looked at it, what people are spending their time on. What's fascinating is people spend about 11 hours, I think that's a month. Yes, it is 11 hours a month online in 2003. That number has increased since then to 15 or 16. So it's increased to 16 in 2007. And it's going to increase again in the next 4 years. But what's fascinating is where people are going to be spending most of their time. You'll see most of the people are going to be spending their time in the community and the entertainment space. While we like to believe that search and information is going to be important because only about 10% of the world's content is on the web, and it's going to take a while before all of it comes on the web. But that's where people are going to spend their time. The question is, are you ready to interact with those people in those forums in what you do? Let's see what happens next. So what does that mean to me? What do I do as a marketeer? What do I do as a person who spends my time trying to figure out how to do my day job? The first interesting observation I have based on all of this stuff is that most of so there's a sort of a reversion happening back to fundamentals. And the reversion that is happening, which I don't think ever left, is that consumers are sort of blocking advertising. And consumers are beginning to understand that all they give a shit about is the performance of the product. And if you go back and look at the examples of the companies I said, which have built brands in the last 10 years, it has all been on the back of products. And I'll explain in a second what I mean by that. There is, back again, a greater focus on performance management and marketing. People want to know what the ROI of your function is. I used to be a chief marketing officer for 5 years. Trust me, I hated the CFO. He always wanted to come measure what I was doing. I told him, it's all good, it's all in the head, it's warm, you won't understand. But eventually I had to leave. And he's still there. The third lesson from this is that if you can find a way of making your advertising relevant for consumers when they need it, you're going to go very, 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 very far. And last but not the least, every element of the 4 Ps we all learned in marketing is going to get impacted by the internet. I was in Dubai yesterday and I was making a presentation slightly different. And I sort of said this, not on a slide, but generally said it. And the gentleman who was going to spoke before me the previous day was sitting in the front row. His name is Philip Kotler. Do you guys know who Philip Kotler is? Some of you should if you went to marketing school. He's supposedly the grandfather of marketing. And he said, if he almost stood up on stage and wanted to come and hug me and say, you're right, read my next book, which is about how the 4 Ps are going to get impacted by the internet. So clearly must be true. So the first one I told you, product performance is going to be relevant. It is relevant. If you look at the last 3 years, the best brands that have been built up there have been on the back of performance of products. What's fascinating is most of those products have been free to the consumer, which I don't know what to do. Does that mean you start taking your products and make them free for everybody? Don't know the answer. And third, which is fascinating again, is there has been a community element to those products. Whether it's eBay, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Google, it has been all about engaging with the user, engaging with the consumer, getting them to contribute. And very seldom in today's world, large brands communicate with their users at the same level, which is a challenge. And I'll say that something which I mentioned to people in Guy's business is, I was talking to the CEO of a newspaper, not the Telegraph, and I said, how many letters to the editors do you get every day? He said, about 5,000. I said, that seems like a big number. Now imagine how passionately do you have to feel to write a letter to the editor. How many of you have written a letter to the editor ever? Wow. Okay, fantastic. Now, I said, how many do you publish? He said, 5. That's like worse than the lottery. Right? You write 5,000 people write letters. You could actually have people who have written 50 letters and never been published. I said, why don't you put them all on your website so people can actually feel that their letters have been read and they've been acknowledged? I don't even know. I said, do you send an acknowledgement? He says, it's not always possible to send an acknowledgement every day to 5,000 people. Right? Now just think of that from a marketeer and a brand person's perspective. Here's people desperately wanting to engage with your brand. And you actually say, let me decide which 5 of you were intelligent enough to say something which I deem worthy. Right? Try doing that to a consumer, right? So anyway, long story short, they did not want to put them on the web because they felt not every consumer is articulate enough, and yeah, we should talk to the newspaper guys what to think about it. But the point I'm trying to make is that you need to find a way that you're talking to the community, you're talking to the consumers, you're talking to users of your products. Most websites I see, most products I see do not engage the consumer. I bought an expensive music system and put it in my house, and of course, the fact that I'm not so technologically savvy, I tried to get it to work and it blew up, and it happened to blow up just a few hours before I was supposed to have many people over at my house. So I tried to figure out how to fix it. And nowadays, everything is software controlled, so you can't really go turn the off button and turn on, etc., whatever. Eventually, that's what I had to do. But anyway, I go to their website. I know all about their management. I know all about their wonderful production facilities. I couldn't even find the user manual on the web. So I go looking for blogs, and there are some people on blogs who have actually identified that this problem exists. And I go look at the blogs, but I didn't quite find the answer. So I thought I was being really smart, and I called a help number in the US, because the US was still open and the UK had closed. So I sort of got them talking to me for about 5 minutes about, what I own, whatever. And suddenly, after 5 minutes, the guy says, "I'm really sorry, sir. I just realized from your product code that you bought this in the UK. I'm really sorry, I can't help you." He hung up on me. I said, "Okay." Again, the point is your brand talking to your consumer? Are you talking to them? So I've been given the red lights, which means I have to go really, really fast, right? Okay, damn. I knew 20 minutes was never going to be enough. So I'm not going to show you the video which I was going to show you. You can have fun.
I love my new iPhone.
I guess.
It does everything. But will it blend? That is the question. Now, you fans on YouTube have asked me to blend an iPhone, so I did it. But I have another.
Sorry. This was an example to show you how there's a blender company. This just doesn't always happen with online brands only. There's a blender company called BlendTech, which sells blenders to restaurants and will sell to consumers. They started a small sort of viral video on blending things. Now they have a channel on YouTube. They charge $5,000 if you want to get your product and put it to blend. They blend toothpaste, they blend iPhones, they blend whatever you want. Right? But users love it. Users are blending shit and sending it to them, saying, "Look how I can blend this stuff." Right? So there is some element of entertainment. Okay, I'm going to go through this stuff really quickly because I already talked about most of it. But there is a greater focus on performance management. If you don't know the ROI of your marketing spend, don't bother. So I sort of disagree with the first slide that showed up when the video started this morning, that 90% of the marketeers don't understand the value of television. I think 90% of the marketeers don't understand the value of the internet. But I said 50 plus, so somewhere between there is the answer, right? The third thing which I talked about is the notion of advertising as a service. This is a quick example to show advertising is advertising when I don't need it. Advertising is information when I need it. So if you're hiking in the desert, when you see a sign saying 1 mile to the next juice bar, that's highly informational. Nobody sees that as an ad. But if I've just finished dinner and you stick a pizza or McDonald's ad in front of me, I'm not a very happy person. You guys understand that? And as I said, every element of the 4 Ps is going to change with what's going to happen on the internet. I will tell you one story and I will stop right there. There's a business on the web called Threadless. And again, I have lots of examples. I could talk forever, but I'm being told I can't. So this is my last story, I promise, right? There's a business on the internet called Threadless. What Threadless does, if you don't know it, they sold 6.2 million T-shirts on the web in 2006. And it's quadrupled every year. What they do is, they've asked their consumers to design T-shirts. And you upload your design onto their website, and then people vote. And whoever votes is implicitly saying, "I'd like to buy that T-shirt." So the people vote, and they print the top 6 T-shirts every week. And they make limited copies. So we have 20,000 of T-shirt 1, which had 40,000 votes. We have 5,000 of T-shirt 2. We have, whatever. They'll make the T-shirts. And they sell them to people who voted for the T-shirts. Pretty straightforward, right? They have 300,000 people registered in their community. They have 140,000 designs which have been uploaded to their website. They do not design anything. They take the design off the web and they print it on a T-shirt and sell it to the consumer. And the reason I find that very fascinating, their philosophy is they said, we didn't create a product and try and sell it to an audience. We created an audience and then decided what they wanted and sold them what they wanted. With that, I'm going to shut up. Thank you very much for listening. I hope you have a fantastic day.